Hello and good morning. It's Friday, sunny outside, and it's time for our virtual coffee. So, our today's guest is Katya Mezek, an expert in international corporate law and the expansion of foreign companies into the US market. Katya is a managing attorney and the founder of the Lex Law based in Santa Clara, California. But for 1 year, she chose Slovenia to be her home. But the most important fact about Katya is she's half Slovenian by her father's side. Katya, hello and a warm welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So before we begin, Katya, as I mentioned, you decided to move to Slovenia for 1 year. How is life in Slovenia?
I mean, it's wonderful. So I've been coming to Slovenia for a long time to visit my family, and I came July 1st of this year. It was not the plan actually to stay, but because it is really, as at least compared to where I'm living in the Bay Area, so much more open regarding, just everyday life here. And I have a couple kids, and we just think it's a much better environment for our family right now. And both my husband and I are working remotely, so we decided to take an opportunity to spend some more time here. And it's been great being around family as well, because in the Bay Area where we're from, we don't have any family there. So it's just been wonderful, and the weather doesn't hurt.
Yeah, that's really great. So many challenges you already mentioned, like remote work and the challenges that all the world is facing also in the States. So we have the new reality here, and businesses are facing additional challenges posed by the pandemic. So, but are still possibilities for companies to do or to start doing business in the US? What is your thinking about that?
Definitely. Definitely, I think that there is. I honestly think that the challenges are the same for whether you're a US-based company or a foreign company. You're still going to be facing, I mean, foreign companies have their own challenges, but as far as all the COVID-related challenges, US companies are facing those as well. It depends on the industry sector too, how companies are doing. Some companies are doing phenomenally right now. You can look at Amazon, for example. People have definitely not stopped spending money. They've doubled their profit in 2020 compared to the same time of year last year. So notwithstanding everything going on, there's still an economy, there's still people spending money, there's still demand for products. So I think that, a combination of taking a look at what you're providing to the market, if there's a demand for your product or the service you're providing, coupled with a solid business strategy and a really good risk management plan, I definitely think that there's opportunity still to do business in the US.
So you mentioned the Amazon people are still spending money, but are companies like doing some big investments? Is there a possibility for a Slovenian company that is producing, for example, big production lines? Are companies in the States doing some investments short term, maybe?
Yeah, I think, investors are still looking for opportunities. The Bay Area is a hot spot, for not as much production, because it's more expensive to produce items there, but tech companies, which probably maybe some of the people on this call are interested in penetrating that market there. There's still, there are so many angel investor groups throughout the Bay Area, opportunities to go and pitch your company for free, before a panel. I was sending links on different types of investor forums where people, and now they're doing online ones. So if you ever wanted to just practice, they do these weekly. I think it's called Pitch Force. If anyone wants to look it up, you can see if there's any way to apply online. And I've been to these events. These companies come before a panel of people with really reputable backgrounds and pitch their company, and then they get feedback from those investors. And then you can use that, and sometimes the investor is interested and they'll talk to you more. or you can just take that feedback, use it to work on your pitch, and then go out further. There's definitely investment, but I think it really will come back again to what is the product or service that you're offering. I mean, right now, for example, IT services are doing really well. Travel agencies aren't. So you need to look at your business and see what it is that you're offering, and see if there's interest for that. And there definitely is. And I have clients currently that are getting investment, and I have clients currently that are shutting down operations. Yeah. So you're going to have both.
Yeah. Depends on the industry. It would be really great to share that link that you mentioned with pitching to investors, to our members. So it's always great to learn from the best. And Americans, you are really the best in pitching and with the sales pitch and everything. So, but what, by your opinion, what companies need to pay attention to in this situation? Has something changed in the business world in the States? What needs to pay attention to?
Yeah, I mean, a lot has changed. There's no denying that. I mean, a lot, we're talking business, but from just everyday life has changed, and also on the business level. But from a business perspective, like we were kind of touching upon earlier, there are office closures. And keep in mind, so I'm talking from the point of view of the Bay Area. I went through a different experience than maybe someone in Nebraska. The US is a very big place. So depending on where you want to start your business, it could be different. But at least for the Bay Area, we can look at Google, Facebook, Apple. They're not sending their employees back until at least July 2021. So there's lots of office closures. Those are really big companies, right? But then some of the smaller to mid-sized companies, even they are taking a look at how they're doing their business. Some people like working remote. I've heard it's the same in Slovenia, from people that have companies here. In the US, even if they're keeping their offices open, maybe they're alternating people, so not too many people are in the office on one day, just like they're doing now in schools there. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is how, what is your, like, even with the people that you're interacting with in the US, how are they working now? Will you really be meeting them in person even if you are there? Or, people are doing these like walk and talks and different ways to try to protect themselves. There's also employment laws have changed. Now you have to take into account different types of sick leave for people that need to take care of family members that have COVID, or maybe they have it themselves, or maybe they think they're sick and they have to stay home, or maybe employees aren't comfortable coming back to work even if you've opened up the office. So how do you handle that? Terminating employees during this time. All those employment type laws are definitely shifting and changing quite often. Then there's immigration laws, of course. We all, most of us are aware that that's almost, it's a pretty bleak situation right now for foreign immigrant travel into the United States. All the way to, say, like due diligence for transactions. Now, some of the questions companies are going to be asked in an acquisition or a merger are going to be COVID related, and probably a whole slew of questions related to their risk mitigation, employment, immigration. How many people do they need coming from other countries? All those types of questions are going to be coming up, down to lending institutions, borrowing debt. I have a client, I have clients that, sorry, there's a helicopter.
Hope they are not looking for you.
Yeah. So I have clients that aren't doing very well, and they're not getting the loans that they need to float their businesses. So maybe I have one client right now who's in a lease, a long-term lease, and she can't get the loan she needs to get the building permit she needs, and she can't pay her rent. So now we're figuring out how to negotiate with the landlord, those types of things. So these are real, there's a lot, and they're real concerns and challenges that weren't necessarily there before March of this year.
You already mentioned the immigration things, the immigration laws that are changing, from day to day, from week to week. This was quite an issue for many years, also before the pandemic. Is there something that you can mention? I know you cannot predict and say 100% yes, it's possible to go with that and that visa, you will get it. But just the basic information, what is going on in the field of immigration?
Yeah. So just to, you know, I'm not an immigration attorney, but I do have friends and I work with immigration attorneys, and I have one colleague in particular who gave a presentation on this recently, and I listened to that presentation, and she has also shared some materials with me. Generally, I think it was April of this year, there was, as probably most people know, a ban on immigrant travel into the United States. Trump, you know, brought that proclamation down. There are exceptions to that. I could read this, you know, it's a 1 or 2 page, pretty short document that my friend sent me. If you would like me to, I could read it. I know a couple exceptions off the top of my head are like green card holders or children under the age of 21 who have US based parents. There are a couple other exceptions to that. Then there's also, I think it was June of this year, there was another ban for employment related non-immigrant visas. So H-1Bs, J-1s, H-1-2s, H-2Bs. I think I get all the letters and numbers mixed up, but definitely H-1Bs, which I know are a very popular one, you know, so they can't come anymore. And I think that's the one that affects foreign companies the most right now. That ban is supposed to be currently, okay, these things can change, currently is in effect until December of this year. So after that month, who knows what's going to happen? Is he going to extend? Is it going to be extended? Is it going? We have an election in November. Is Trump even going to be in office anymore? So come December, really cannot predict. But at the present time, it's very difficult to get there.
So we already got some questions from the public, very related to the immigration topic. So when do you think will be possible to work with you? As you already answered some of these things, and you will answer on that question also in following minutes. What about visas? You explained that, and the hard question: will Trump win again? You are from California, which is a Democratic state.
Yeah, so we're not, you know, big Trump supporters for the most part. So we shall see. I'm not going to touch on politics right now.
And the polls are changing every day. We are, of course, following that. We are also a non-political organization, but we are following that, and we'll probably have a small event in regard with the U.S. election.
Yeah.
So if we focus on establishing a company, an office in the States, can we do all that remotely? Can we establish a company in the States now in this situation remotely?
Yes, definitely. And I do it for clients quite often. Everything from forming the company to opening a bank account can be done online. And that's a great option, both for companies during this time where they can't travel there, but also for companies that don't even need people on the ground, which quite a few of my Slovenian clients don't actually need people on the ground in the US. So yeah, definitely.
So you can basically did everything, also sign every papers through some attorney, some representative like you are, and do everything from Slovenia, from Italy, anywhere.
Yeah, you know, so I've worked in the United States and I've worked also in Slovenia. So I worked as in-house counsel for Goodyear Dunlop Sava in Kran, and I worked at a law firm in Ljubljana as well. And I know that Slovenia is much more strict on signatures, notarization. When I tell my Slovene clients, don't worry, you can sign it through DocuSign. No, I don't need an original. You can just email me a copy. I usually get, are you sure? That's okay. Yeah, so a lot of these things are more relaxed as far as forming and filing documents in the United States generally.
And you are already helping one of our member with some similar things.
Yeah, Yeah, one of the companies, one of the issues that arises sometimes is that the notary in Slovenia wants a document to show something that doesn't exist in the United States. This particular document, I've been asked a few times by Slovenian clients, not just from Slovenia, but I have another client who opened a bank in Hong Kong, and the Hong Kong bank wants this same document. It's called a certificate of incumbency. But this is something we don't have. So we have to come up with creative ways to get them what they want when there's really not a governmental entity that produces these documents.
So would you advise to the Slovene company that it's kind of crucial to get an advisor, a lawyer, an attorney to settle these things? Because we Slovenes are we'll do it on our own, you know?
Yeah, so
that's why we don't need to pay the fee.
So I have a great example about that. I have another Slovene client, but he's an individual, he's a scientist, and he works on blood regeneration for youth preservation. And he got into a partnership with a company in the United States, and he had Slovene counsel. He was on the board of directors. He signed over the rights in the patent that he had to the company. Okay, sometimes people do that, that's okay. He is a shareholder and he was on the board of directors, but Slovene counsel advised him the company wasn't doing so well, told him to withdraw from the board of directors because he could be personally liable if the company goes under. And I told him that's completely incorrect. And now he has no say in running the company. Shareholders, board members are never personally, very rarely, unless there's fraud or something else going on, that's one of the benefits of forming a company. You're personally not liable for the debts and liabilities of the company. So now we're in a situation where, trying to help him in his position within the company and his rights.
And you mentioned the patents. AmCham Slovenia is, I guess, the only business association that deals with the intellectual property rights and intellectual property protection. So, is there something? Is something changed in this field, in the field of intellectual property, since the pandemic in this year? Would you like to mention something?
Yeah, there hasn't nothing has changed as regards COVID. Timelines are roughly still the same. All the filing system has been online. That's still the same. But I'm also, my partner actually does intellectual property and data privacy. She could definitely speak more to this topic, but there has been a law passed earlier this year, I believe, where it is required by the United States Patent and Trademark Office, the USPTO, that any person that is not a US citizen or doesn't have a social security number, I believe, of some sort, has to use a US attorney to file their trademark. The US attorney has to be barred somewhere, registered to practice law somewhere in the United States and use their contact information. You always put an attorney's contact information on a trademark application, for example, and that has to be a US one now. It used to be that like a Slovenian attorney could file a US trademark for their client, but it can't happen anymore.
So, but let's go a bit back now. You establish a company remotely. You need a US bank account. Can you do that also remotely? You mentioned that you can do. How is this procedure?
Yes. So just generally, most national banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, these types of banks used to, but maybe as of a couple years ago will not, as a company policy, open bank accounts for foreign individuals without social security numbers. So while you're opening up a US-based subsidiary company, it is still foreign individuals coming to open that bank account and be signatories. So there are, however, physical banks that will open bank accounts for individuals without social security numbers. Generally not big national ones though. So our firm has contacts with banks on the physical ones on the West Coast and the East Coast, depending where you're located, that will make the process fairly simple to go and open a bank account. Now, during these times, obviously, if you can't travel to the United States and go to a physical bank and open an account, there is at least one bank that is a purely online bank. So the only drawback to that is that if you ever want in the future to go to a physical ATM, bankomats, and take out money or something, you're not going to be able to because they don't exist. But if all you need to do is have a bank account so that there's a place where people can pay you and deposit money, and you need to just do like online transfers of money between the United States and Slovenia or wherever, it's a great option, and they make it so easy. You don't have to have a social security number. Everything is online. The process, all of it is virtual and online.
Super.
And it's very quick.
Mm-hmm. Right. So another thing that the company needs is also the federal tax ID. Do every company, the foreign company, needs that when you are doing business in the US or with the US company?
Yeah, if you're forming a US-based subsidiary, and I believe even if you're just selling products and receiving income within the United States, you need a federal tax ID because you'll have to pay taxes. So in order to file a tax return, in order to open a bank account, in order to hire employees, any of those things requires a federal tax ID number. It's a completely easy thing to obtain. For people with social security numbers, it's an instantaneous online process. You put in all your information, you automatically get your federal tax ID number at the very end of the application. It's free, doesn't cost anything. For foreign individuals without social security numbers, it's a paper application. We have to we do it on the computer, but then you have to fax it in or mail it in, and then you have to get their response. So a lot of times people are like, okay, I formed my company, I need my tax ID because I got to go open a bank account. It's got to be fast, and it's going to be at least a week before you get your tax ID and you can go open up a bank account.
So when you start your business in the States, is it crucial to pick a right state? So it's 50 states market, or a partner with whom you will do your business?
Yeah.
What is the most important?
Well, the first question is, do you need a partner? Not every company needs a partner. So you take on a partner, which just, partners have pluses and minuses to partnerships, have pluses and minuses to them. If you take on a partner, it means that your business is lacking something, some resource, some knowledge, something that you need to fill. And so you get that from a partner in the United States, possibly. If you know from the outset that you need a partner, I would do that step first, because depending on where that partner is located, that might be the state that you want to form your company in. Maybe they have operations there. You can use their physical address for your documents. Someone there probably has a social security number, so they can be the one applying for the federal tax ID number. I had a Slovenian client. We formed their company in Massachusetts. They didn't know that they needed a partner. Later on, they got a partner, and that partner was located in Wisconsin, and they had their physical operations there. So what we ended up doing was actually moving the company base from Massachusetts to Wisconsin so that it looks like the company was actually formed in Wisconsin. It's just an extra step. So if you know from the beginning that you need a partner, do that first. After that's decided, then it's a kind of a twofold question of what state do I form my company in? Very important, yes. And what type of entity do I choose? You're going to look at both of those at the same time.
So can you explain a bit different entities, which is the most suitable, for example, for an industry or a type of business that you are in?
Yeah, definitely. So the United States has generally, I would say, 4 types of business structures, from sole proprietorships to partnerships to limited liability companies, LLCs, which I believe you have a similar type of company in Slovenia, and corporations, which are akin to the DOO in Slovenia. So I will just take out the first 2 because a sole proprietorship and a registered partnership are not good choices for a foreign company entering the US market, which I'll explain why. And when I say partnership, someone in an LLC or a corporation, you could call them your partner. So when you partner up with someone, but I mean, when you're registering an actual partnership, you wouldn't want to do that for tax reasons and liability reasons. So the great thing about and why we tell foreign companies that they should set up a subsidiary in the United States is liability and tax. From a liability perspective, if you set up a subsidiary here in the United States, that cuts off any liability from the parent company or individuals owning the US subsidiary in the foreign country. So if you get sued, if something happens, you know, whatever, that liability is contained within that US subsidiary and will not reach the parent company. So that's both for LLCs and corporations. From a tax perspective, I can just explain a little bit how the companies work. So an LLC is what we call a pass-through entity. So if you say the company makes $100,000 in profit in a year, it will not be taxed in its ABC LLC. ABC LLC will not be taxed. There's no company tax level. It flows through the company. Say you have two owners, 50-50, 50,000 to one individual, 50,000 to another individual, and it's taxed on their personal tax returns. That's not a good situation for a foreign company, because what that means is that you're going to be taxed on the income in the US because you made money here and they see that. And then you're also going to be taxed in Slovenia because it's just flowed through to your personal tax returns in Slovenia. So in a minute, you're getting a huge chunk of your money taken away. Now, I'll come back to that in a second and how we can remedy that fact. A corporation has probably what a lot of people have heard, double taxation, where it's taxed at the company level, and then the money stays there. It stays there until the company pays out a dividend or some other sort of payout is made to the shareholders. And only then will those individuals be then that second tier of tax, you have that second tier of taxation, which would be in their home country. So because the money is just, the income is taxed once at the company level and held in the company, there's no double dipping from the countries. And that's what we want to minimize the tax exposure for the foreign parent or owner. So the way we remedy that with an LLC is that an LLC can file a pretty simple form with the IRS electing to be taxed like a corporation. And then that will keep the money in the LLC. The LLC will be taxed just like a corporation is. The money is kept there. And then we fix this problem of double dipping from countries. So when we form companies for foreign owners, those are really the two types of entities that we're looking at. There's other kind of taxation nuances and things that I are probably a little bit beyond the scope of this, but just generally to keep in mind that those are the two that we work with. And CPAs agree, yeah.
So it's different, taxation is different, it depends on state to state. But some Slovenian companies choose Delaware state for their, office or subsidiary. Is that a wise idea? Is it because it's cheaper, easier? What would you advise to Slovenian company when they say they chosen Delaware for the subsidiary or for office?
Yeah. So what I was talking about before is federal taxes, and yes, you're right. State taxes vary from, some states have no state tax. So Delaware by no means is a cheaper or easier state. There are some states that have absolutely no annual fees, like New Mexico. There's no annual filing. You don't have to pay anything to maintain your company. Then there's states that have a much easier process. Delaware doesn't have an online filing process. You have to submit it. Either someone walks it into the office or you mail it in. Nevada has a purely online formation filing process. So you don't have to do that or pay anyone to go in. So, but what Delaware does have and why people are drawn to that state is it has the most established corporate laws dating back the longest that tend to be pro-company. And if there's ever a conflict or an issue, you have the clearest set of laws to turn to see what needs to be done about it. That's why investors so would expect that the company that they're investing in would be formed in Delaware for that reason. But to keep in mind that if you form a company in Delaware, but your principal office is in California, you're going to also have to register in California and be paying annual maintenance fees in 2 states. These costs are not prohibitive. Okay, it's just an extra cost and an extra thing to take care of on an annual basis. So I would say usually the companies that are forming in Delaware are those companies looking for investment, or they actually have their principal office in Delaware. But if you are a small mom and pop shop and you just, like my Slovenian travel agency client, they just want to bring, more people into Slovenia. They don't have any eye towards investment. They're not a big tech company. There's no reason for them to form their company in Delaware. They can form their company. They actually wanted to thought maybe they would move to North Carolina. They didn't know exactly at that time, but that could have been an option if they thought that they were going to have an office in North Carolina. So it's really for the tech companies that are looking for investment, or the ones that have a principal office address in Delaware.
So Katya, by your experiences, you are dealing, you're doing many things with Slovenian companies, with Slovenian entities. Which state is in the first place? Is it California for opening an office or starting a business there for Slovenian companies? Do they choose California, or I don't know, some not so known state?
Yeah. Not California is probably the worst. If you can avoid it, it's the most expensive, and if you don't have to be there, don't. Nevada is a popular choice because they don't have state tax, and they have a purely online filing system. I have one Slovenian client, a bigger one. They sell gasket sheets. They have a logistics service provider, and a warehouse facility in Georgia, in Atlanta, but we formed their company in Nevada because there's no state taxes there. So if you really can be anywhere, definitely avoid states like California or New York. I would choose, and there's also states, it really depends on what you're looking for. No state taxes is a very desirable one. So there are states with that, like Nevada that I said. If some people call me and they, for various reasons, don't want their name anywhere on the formation documents, Delaware requires you to list the name and address of every officer, of every director. It's out there. But some people are like, I just, I don't want my name there. So there's states where they know that and they allow you to be anonymous, and your name isn't on there anywhere. So there's different states provide different benefits in that regard.
For example, Katya, there's a Slovenian company, and most of their customers are from the East Coast. Is it the wisest idea to open up an office or a subsidiary on the East Coast then, or it's no importance where to open a subsidiary?
So it depends so just because you have customers in a state doesn't mean you have to register to do business there. Registering to do business in a state, each state has the factors that you look at to see if the business that you're doing within a state rises to the level of needing to register in that state. I don't know them all off the top of my head, but certain things like if you hire an employee in a state, if you have your principal office in a state, things like, those things rise to the level of carrying on a certain amount of business within that state that they want to tax you, be able to, regulate you. If you're just selling products in a state, if you make an investment into a state, you get a loan from a bank in a different state, certain activities don't rise to that level. So we always analyze, well, if all your clients are located on the East Coast, could you maybe have do you need a partner there? Do you need a warehouse? If you have a warehouse, you'll need to register in the state. So then it would just make sense to form your company in that state, so you're not having to pay for 2 states. But if you don't, and you're just selling to people on the East Coast, then form your company in Nevada. it's just a formation spot, but your principal office address will need to be there as well. That's something I didn't mention it earlier, but about the address. You know, when opening a bank account, even on the online bank account process, you do need to have a physical address in the United States. So even if you never open an actual physical office, you need to have an address. So some people that have a partner, like I mentioned earlier, they can use their address sometimes, or my Slovenian client that has the logistics service provider in Georgia and has the warehouse, they let them use their address for Georgia. But if you don't have that, it's not a problem. There are countless service providers that provide an actual address, collect your mail for you, scan it, email it to you, and it's, you know, I don't know, $30 a month, something like that.
So you need a physical address for bank account opening,
yeah.
Not, for example, for tax ID number.
For the tax ID number, you can actually use your foreign address on that application. But for opening a bank account in the United States and some states' registration processes to form a company, some require a physical address and some don't. So it depends on the state too, but definitely for opening a bank account. So in all situations, you need a US physical address.
Okay. So now it's many people put this entering to this market beside, but do you think it's wise to dedicate this time, this turbulent time, to better prepare, to minimize risk, and to I don't know, to talk to as many as possible professionals, experts of the US market in this time? Is it good to dedicate this time to better prepare the company and the product to US market?
Yeah, I think that goes for both foreign companies and US based companies. And even in non-COVID times, you know, you should be researching the market, but I think now there's just different considerations that you also need to take into account, and those challenges that can be faced, and, you know, really looking at the demand and where your industry lies and how that industry is doing in the United States. There are, what's it called? Pitchforce is the name of a company. They produce quarterly reports on different industry sectors, how M&A is doing. I did a presentation on this when the first quarterly report came out, and that was kind of at the beginning of COVID. People didn't really know what was going on. Industries like healthcare and IT were doing really well, and, you know, but then it was more focused on M&A, that presentation, but it did show a pretty significant drop in M&A activity at that time. So it's really, I think you need to, in addition to the normal due diligence that you would ever do when you enter a new market, it's also taking into account, you know, and it's not just your company, it's also downstream and upstream. You know, you may need suppliers and other service providers to support your company, and what happens if something happens to them. So your supply chain also needs to be taken into account. It's kind of exponential, you know, because if something happens to them, that could affect your business, and how likely is that to happen? And you know, are your service providers and supply chain, if things get worse, you know, or things shut down again, things are kind of opening back up again, what if it shuts down again? And again, even if it gets a lot better, you know, does that necessarily mean that your business is going to get better too?
So it's important to use this period also this year when you'll be in Slovenia. If our members have any questions in the following month, they can contact us and we'll put you in contact with Katya. So that's
definitely. But also, you know, I have a great, because I've done this so many times for foreign company, have a great network of CPAs and immigration attorneys, and CPAs that are knowledgeable in international law. I mean, CPAs are very important when coming into the US market, and I work very closely with CPAs, and I have different, levels depending on the size of the company. A small mom and pop company isn't going to need the big, accounting firm that deals with the really complex issues, but the bigger companies that have more of a complex transaction going on may need that. So we have different levels to provide those resources depending on the size of the company, what would be a good fit for them, along with the immigration attorneys and insurance brokers and the banks that will open accounts for you, and happy to share that information.
Super, thank you. So today is September 11, not such a great day, because 19 years ago a terrorist attack happened in New York, in Pentagon. But this year, United States is facing also other challenging issues and times. So the protests, riots, the Black Lives Matter movement, and this is also this makes companies discouraged towards idea to go to the US market. What is your opinion? How can you, not to persuade companies to think about the US market, but these are challenging times, how this is already and will influence the daily business in the States, by your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, as we mentioned earlier, daily business is affected, and how I think before I left to come here, all my calls were Zoom calls. People were kind of starting to meet with each other a little bit, but and some people really missed that, but a lot of people were saying, no, why would I do that? Zoom is working so great. So daily life is definitely affected. People generally, so it's not just business, it's also how do people think. People are generally, at least in the Bay Area, and I would assume across most of the United States, because like you said, it's not just COVID. We're having riots, we're having fires, we're having, people wearing masks versus people not wearing masks fighting. We have protests, it's kind of, we have an election coming up in November. It's a very tenuous time. And I think that people are living in kind of a state of a bit of anxiety, because it's just, that's what uncertainty provokes in people. So there's definitely that aspect to it. And I definitely would say it is not the right time for every company to go and start opening up new subsidiaries during this tenuous time. So it really depends on, testing out the market. You don't necessarily have to go and open up a company right away, but you can test it out. You can reach out. If you have a tech company, you can reach out to investors. You can try to pitch your company. You can see what the feedback is. You can do your research on the market, see who your competitors are. All that same due diligence before you enter a new market or open a company still applies. And just see how it is during this time, but then also go a little bit further into what happens when this time is over, either for better or for worse, and how will that affect my business, as much as you can predict.
Thank you, Katya. I guess we ran out of time, but as you just mentioned, do use this time for test the market to learn how to pitch great. And I would like to thank you, Katya. It was a great discussion, and as we both already mentioned, you are 1 year you will be in Slovenia 1 year. So you will be present also within the AmCham community, so people can reach out to me or to my colleagues and will connect you with you. So I would like to thank you also to the AmCham Patron members, our great supporters, and follow us again next Friday. We'll have an interesting topic. You'll get the invite on Monday. And don't forget, we have a annual General Assembly meeting on Tuesday. So I hope to see you in Hotel Sloan at 4:30. So enjoy the weekend. Thank you again, Katya, and see you next week. Bye.
Bye.